Horikoshi is lying to us, all for the purpose of executing his secret plan to break all of our hearts. My Hero Academia chapter 327 is titled Rest, and it focused heavily on Deku's return to the Class 1A dormitories, where we see the interaction between Deku and his classmates as they plan for how they're going to go about their future together, the reunion between All Might and Deku, the resolve of Shoto and his face-off against Dabi, and the overall wholesomeness of this chapter is all a manipulation tactic that Horikoshi is purposely using to deviate our minds from what is truly important, which is actually the downfall of a lot of plans that were made in this chapter. And by the end of this video, you will know the truth and how to guard your heart against Horikoshi's maniacal plan. Hey, Wyze. Now, it is really important to understand that the main characters or the main attractions of My Hero Academia chapter 327 is not Deku. And in fact, it's actually everyone that is reacting to Deku. Class A is relieved that they have been able to successfully bring Deku back to UA. And upon getting into the dormitories, the first thing that they did is rush Deku into the shower and bathe him. Working in a perfectly synchronized group, the great quartet of Mineta, Ojiro, Kaminari, and Kirishima, they were able to successfully throw Deku into the bath water and allow him to soak his body. And as the rest of the boys in Class 1A are coming into the bath, we notice Bakugo being obnoxious as he always is, but he also have large scars on his body in which I believe they are attributed to the fight against Shigaraki in the Pernoba Liberation War arc, where he sacrificed himself for Deku and potentially gained a quirk awakening, but that's just a theory. As Bakugo was being overbearing in how he responds to everybody, Tokoyami, who actually looks like he's kind of buff, pause if needed, but Tokoyami mentioned that although Bakugo apologized, he sure hasn't changed at all, and he should just let up already and chill off from his old personality. And with Bakugo coming into the bath, he lets everyone know that he has not given up his goal of becoming the #1 hero. But interestingly enough, he mentioned something that he's never said ever in the entire story of My Hero Academia, which is that everyone else in Class 1A are still his rivals, including including Izuku Midoriya. This shows that Bakugo has grown astronomically, because in the beginning of the series he would view everyone else as extras and not even on his level, but now to the point where Bakugo has a certain level of respect against everyone in Class 1A that prevents his arrogant side from showing, and thus he views them as rivals instead of extras, furthering the development of Bakugo, and makes me more curious as to what is going to happen to him in the future if he doesn't have a main storyline. But in continuing, Ochako immediately went to sleep after giving a fantastic speech that changed Deku's mindset forever, and it's possible that Horikoshi specifically pushed Ochako into a different environment, because if Deku and Ochako were to see each other, they would have to have a certain conversation, more likely starting with Deku thanking Ochako for what she said to him, and then continuing on to potentially one of them confessing how they feel to one another. But instead of having a conversation with Ochako and thanking her, Deku thanks everyone else, and he apologized for the trouble that he put them through. And in not even accepting the apology of Deku, which I do find rather interesting, Mina Ashido randomly asked for Deku to tell them about One for All. If Deku does intend to work with Class A, it is important for them to know information about his quirk, especially because that is the reason why All for One is after him. But I would still be very cautious because there is potentially a UA traitor. However, before Deku was even able to think about whether he's going to answer that question or not, Shoto came in and said that Deku is probably more tired than everyone and that they should allow him the time to rest. Being that they went through so much trouble of getting Deku from his rogue state back to UA, they should allow him to just chill and talk whenever he has the adequate energy. But apparently Deku is fine, and in fact he can't sleep at all, and it seems like something is bothering Deku. So when Shoto asks, Deku says that it was something that he did to All Might that is really weighing on his mind, and that he won't be able to have proper sleep until he's able to apologize, but he just can't seem to get a hold of All Might. However, little did Deku know, All Might was literally stalking him at that particular moment in time, as we see him burst through the door while eavesdropping through the window, which is a little bit creepy, but again, I don't pass anything by All Might and his entrances. Now, as All Might charges into Class A's dorms, he immediately apologizes to Deku that he wasn't able to help him whenever he was in need, to which Deku replies that he's already done so much for him. Now, this is where things start to shift a little bit, and you need to really pay attention to get the truth as to what is going on in this scene. The most interesting thing about this conversation conversation is when Mina Ashido butts in and says, if you're gonna apologize, then apologize to us, All Might. Don't just up and leave without saying anything. And the facial expression of All Might pretty much tells you everything. And if it doesn't, then what he says everything. To which he says, everything will be coming together. Sorry for worrying you all. And I need you all to keep that phrase in your head as I talk about that a little bit later in this video. But All Might continues to tell Class A that he will not go into details, but he's to acquire some new information and that the answers will be coming relatively soon. He mentions that he and the heroes will do everything they can with the new information that they have, and although he can't do anything with his body, he still, and as All Might was talking, Deku cuts him off and saying that the bento box that he gave him was very delicious, and that he's positive that he ended up in this rogue state because he left All Might. Many people might not like this reunion, if you will, of Deku and All Might, and if you happen to be one of those individuals, you fell right into the traps of Horikoshi's deception. And in this case, it's the inner monologue that All Might is having to himself while telling the students in Class A what he wants them to know, saying things like, I'm not an active hero anymore, and I've made my mind up. I'll fight even if I have to crawl along the battlefield to see everything through, and the flame that burns within them. I'll show these students that I can keep up. Horikoshi slid this monologue in as if we don't understand that this is literally All Might saying that he's going to essentially die. And in considering how he's talking and what he's thinking, they don't go together at all. Meaning that although this was a reunion, this isn't actually the conversation that All Might and Deku needs to have. And that there's going to be a point in time in the future where Deku and All Might is going to have a really difficult conversation that more or less revolves around All Might's ability or lack of ability to be in battle. So Horikoshi is very blatantly using this lighthearted, very wholesome chapter to put some nuggets as to the end of All Might, which will easily be the saddest point in the entire story. After All Might thanks Deku and Class UA, he decides to leave to go see Endeavor, Hawks, and all the other heroes and flesh out more of the plan from the information that All Might received from Stain. And the moment he left, Deku fulfilled the promise that he said early in this chapter, which was that he would not be able to sleep until he's able to apologize to All Might. And sleep is exactly what Deku did, with Shoto covering him with a cover on the couch. Interestingly enough though, the entire story shifts to focus more on Shoto, in which he's saying that he's Dabi's younger brother and Endeavor's son. So he bet that deep down, Deku was really worried about him. Kirishima comes into the conversation asking Shoto if he's frustrated because it's not like he deserves any of this. And Shoto's next words were actually very mature and really powerful. He said that he got so caught up into his own problems that he lost sight of his origins. But now he's different. He's gonna try to prove that to everyone, and he won't allow anyone to worry anymore. And if you remember what I asked you to remember earlier in this video, All Might apologized to Mina and Class A for worrying them all. This is why I believe that if you think that this is wholesome and this is going to be a fantastic thing, your heart is going to be broken because of the manipulation that you have allowed Horikoshi to give you. Because in every area of the My Hero Academia story, whenever someone says, I don't want you to worry about me, they typically do things that make you worry about them. And the greatest example, to not go too deep, is actually Rogue Deku, in which the only reason why he decided to do what he was doing is because he had the power to do it and he didn't want anyone else to worry. And now you go to All Might, who visibly is expressing some concern when it comes to having anybody worry about him. And we see that the way he thinks is just as reckless as Deku. So based on that, Shoto will experience something probably with Dabi relatively soon in the story of My Hero Academia, to which that will push him into the Rogue Deku mindset in some cases, where he feels like he might need to do everything by himself. I may have to say that for its own individual video to go more extensive in it on how it will affect Endeavor and the parallels between Shoto and Deku. But this is yet again Horikoshi pulling the loop-de-loop and pull when it comes to Shoto's character being so wholesome, when in reality this is signs for the beginning of the end of Shoto's positive character. And continuing, Jiro comes into the conversation and she wants to find out how she can be of value to the civilians in the world. And she came up with a fantastic idea that will ease the mind of the civilians and potentially boost their morale, which is to create an event that they did in the cultural festival. And I genuinely love this idea of Jiro, because the purpose of a hero is to protect the peace of mind of the civilians. In this scene, Jiro is showing great signs of being a hero, and I'm happy that Horikoshi introduced the cultural festival, and it's likely that Horikoshi introduced the cultural festival for this exact reason, meaning that we might be getting Gentle Criminal soon as well. With everyone in Class A on board, they all decided to move forward together and go beyond plus ultra. The last portion of the chapter I'm going to save for its own individual video. But if you want to see my live reaction to My Hero Academia chapter 327, check this video out right here. Win your zone every single